Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the 6th INAE NAEK workshop on the theme of perspective of space technology or space development. This is Professor Sung Nan from Seoul National University. I'm very pleased to host the first session of this workshop. This workshop is co-organized by the National Academy of Engineering of Korea and Indian National Academy of Engineering. Honorable members and two academy-related experts in India as well as Korea are participating in this meeting online. Personally, I think this is a very timely workshop because Korea and India both are putting a lot of efforts on space technology. And especially last year's success of Danuri of Korea and last week's success of India's Chandrayaan-3 landing on the south pole of the moon for the first time of human history. We may start by the two leaders of our society. First of all, I would like to introduce President of our side, Dr. Kinam Kim, who also served as Chairman of Samsung Advanced Institute of Technology. Now, Dr. Kim will give you the welcome address. Please give him with big applause. I think there's a
the National Academy of Engineering of Korea and the Indian National Academy of Engineering have long sought new areas for cooperation while maintaining close relationship. Through the annual workshops, NAEK and INAA have been building up the networking platform and initiating new joint collaboration, as well as consolidating existing collaboration between Indian and Korean engineers. First of all, I would like to congratulate India and ISRO team on your successful Chandrayaan-3 lunar South Pole landing, which is a historic achievement in space technology. We are honored to have speakers at ISRO on this workshop. It makes our workshop more timely and meaningful. Now, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to INAE for your efforts and dedication to make our collaboration fruitful. Especially, I am grateful to President Indranil Mana for his strong support and leadership. As a special strategic partners, our two countries have leveraged our strengths. Indeed, we can see that both the nations have come closer to each other in many aspects. The size of bilateral trade between Korea and India reached the highest ever figure in 2022. It grew by 17.3% to $27.8 billion in 2022. Also, 3 months ago, at the Korea and India summit, both nations agreed to strengthen collaboration in high-tech defense industries, including space development. Through this year's workshop, we will explore the perspective on new forms of space development and examine major issues in space policies. In order to take the lead in the rapidly changing environment of the future. We both will need to make efforts to communicate closely and cooperate between industry and academia. Combining Korea's strong IT technology and India's outstanding R&D capabilities, I am convinced that we'll be able to create greater synergy and obtain new opportunities for mutual growth. Last but not least, I do appreciate the fellow coordinators and speakers, including Professor Sanjay Mittal and Professor Changjin Lee. Wish you all successful and enjoyable workshop. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Dr. Kim, President Kim, for the welcome address. Now, I'd like to invite the President of INAE for the opening address. Please welcome Professor Indrane Mana with big applause.
Dr. Kinam Kim, President, National Academy of Engineering of Korea. Mr. S. Somnath, Chairman, ISRO, Secretary, Department of Space, Government of India. Dr. Sung Ryol Lee, President, Korean Aerospace Research Institute. Professor Sung Woon An, Seoul National University, Korea. Professor Sanjay Mittal, Aerospace Engineering, IIT Kanpur, India. The eminent speakers who are going to speak in this 6th edition of the Indian National Academy of Engineering and National Academy of Engineering Korea workshop on perspectives on space development, and colleagues and friends from both the countries. Namaskar, good morning and good afternoon to all of you. It is indeed a landmark that India and ISRO has managed to land on the South Pole of the moon very successfully, and the whole world, the scientific community, are very happy about this achievement. It also speaks volume of the commitment of the two academies of India and Korea that we have maintained our bilateral program despite the interruptions caused by the global pandemic. And we are now speaking on this platform and talking about the 6th edition of our joint workshop. We have addressed very many important issues. For example, the last year it was on August 26 and 25 and 26, and we spoke about advanced materials for sustainable development. And this year we have devoted our discussion on space development. Both the countries are very keen to not only explore, but even derive advantages from various space-related initiatives. The two themes chosen are very appropriate and timely: development of satellite and space exploration and policies. The pandemic actually has also taught us to look at the brighter side, or as they say, the glass half filled and not half empty. So we are able to continue our collaboration through this hybrid mode, which certainly is a very successful exercise. And we certainly wish that this kind of an interaction continues until we are able to visit each other like before. From the Indian National Academy of Engineering side, I just would like to remind that we are the only Academy of Engineering in this country, established in 1987, and we have 920 fellows on our roll, elected from within the country, 98 fellows from more than half a dozen different countries in the world, and about 138 young associates elected as young engineers below the age of 35. It is also a very nice coincidence that we have elected a very eminent academician from Korea this year, Professor Yong Seop Kim from POSTECH, as a foreign fellow of this academy, which of course is going to be ratified very soon. We would like to strengthen the ties, as President of NAEK, Dr. Kim, just mentioned, that we certainly have a lot more to cover in the future days. The trade is growing, collaborations are growing. We have decided to have joint activities or very direct collaboration in the area of space and defense. And I see a great opportunity for the two countries to come closer in areas of science and technology, and in particular in academic interactions. Both the countries have very world-renowned institutions, both in Korea and India, and we have plenty of opportunities where we could have faculty exchange, student exchange, and joint research programs funded by both the countries in a reciprocation manner. And we would like to, of course, pursue that through our respective governments. INAE observes 5 annual events, and apart from various other programs, we would like to have more of international presence. I'm also happy to share with you that the Council of Engineering Academies and Technological Sciences, CATES, has 4 different chosen activities, and one of them is on engineering education. And India and USA are co-chairing that, in which the Korean Academy also is a very active partner. So this is how the international collaboration and cooperation should progress and benefit the entire humanity. I'm very happy that this year Professor Sanjay Mittal and Professor Sung Hoon An have taken the lead to create a very nice program. We all are looking forward to listening to the eminent experts who are going to talk about these 2 specific themes on development of satellite and space exploration and policies. We look forward to learning from them what new is emerging, and eventually we'll come out with a joint declaration. So thank you very much for your attention, and wishing you all a very happy and a fruitful interaction during this 2-day workshop. Thank you, and Jai Hind.
Thank you, President Mana. So from both of our leaders, welcoming and opening talk, it seems that 2 countries' academy can collaborate much further, not just space technology, but more like global issues together. So before we start the first session, we're going to have 2 keynote speakers from the leaders of space development. So first speaker of Korea is, the first speaker is from India, and Mr. Sridhana Somanas, the president of Indian Space Research Organization. The floor is yours, President Somanas. Please give us your recent development and success of the stories. Okay, please.
Honorable President of INAE and President of NAEK, my heartfelt thanks to you for giving me this opportunity to speak on the accomplishments of the Indian space sector, as well as the way forward when we are discussing India-South Korea collaboration. In ISRO, we work with the various verticals, this being a people-centric and application-driven organization with its mandate to serve on various space application profiles. So the application sector remains very important, where we connect with the governments, departments, ministries to serve various needs from the space sector. So for that, we create the space infrastructure, including the spacecrafts, and for the launching all of them as much as possible from India, the launch vehicle community has developed good capability. This capacity building is very important in this, because unless you have that capability, the utilization of the space sector will become very poor. The new emerging Gaganyaan program, especially the human spaceflight program, has created a new vertical in ISRO. In the last many years, we have been working on space programs and building satellites, launching them, doing technology developments, as well as doing science missions in a big manner. And one of the significant outcomes has been the ability to launch customer satellites from other nations through Indian launchers. And it has been hugely successful, especially in the domain of small and medium class satellites. We also look at space exploration in a big manner. So these numbers of the launches indicates the type of effort that we were able to gather from the Indian industries to build and launch these missions. The space application vertical continued to remain as very important, especially with the ministries and the departments of the government of India. There are 100 plus ministries are working with us in terms of providing certain services in very key areas, especially in the domain of infrastructure development, the roads and buildings and the infrastructures. Then looking at the natural calamities and disasters, the strategic applications, of course, is very important. All the geospatial applications are currently running on top of the capability of Earth observation that we are able to provide. For remaining dependent on the launches of the government of India and also the Indian people, it is important that we build the required launch capability through continuous improvements over the years. And from the last many years, ISRO has been hugely successful in developing launcher capability and build them in India for large number of launches. The technology elements from this came through collaborative efforts with other nations and also acquisitions. But today, we are able to build them for ourselves from basic engineering. And because of that, we are able to work on future engineering challenges like LOX, methane engine, etc. And we look forward to bring down the cost of access to space substantially while we build huge rockets in the future. Some of the recent missions recently has been a very, very important one as far as the space sector in India is concerned. The commercial launch of the LVM-3 for the OneWeb with 72 satellites, the Chandrayaan-3 launch using LVM-3, the user-funded launches of the PSLV, which is very much commercial, the successful second launch of the SSLV-D2 are very, very important. And we look forward that these missions clearly showcase that India is capable of launching or accomplishing large number of launches in short period of time and with a commercial intent in mind. Currently, ISRO is hosting 53 spacecrafts in various domains, the Earth observation, the communication, navigation, as well as science missions. And the Earth observation is currently under Department of Space, and the entire data is now provided to users, which are medium resolution data is free. Even high resolution data becomes free for most of the government users. And we have recently released a utilization plan for all the remote sensing data for the country, especially in the sectors where there is intensely used. The communication satellites are also gone into our NSIL, the public sector undertaking under Department of Space, to handle them in a commercial manner. The navigation satellites provide the NAVIC positioning timing services, and it is recently augmented with an additional new generation NAVIC satellite. And we look at science in a big manner. The Chandrayaan-3 itself an indicator of our continued effort in the science missions. For all of this to do, we have created an ecosystem in the country with large number of industry participation, as well as with various stakeholders such as the regional academic collaborators, the Indian Institute of Technologies, and other sponsored research activities spread across laboratories in India, academic institutions in India, and this is continuously exploited to the benefit of the entire scientific community, so that whatever we do, especially engineering, design of systems, as well as data utilization from exploration and ground-based observations are well utilized by the community all over. Navigation, the NAVIC has been a very role model in this part of creating a regional navigation system using a geo-positioning satellite, and this has been suffering little bit of problem due to the failures of the atomic clock, and now we have launched the new generation NAVIC NVS-01 with the Indian atomic clock to sustain and expand this in the future. The scientific missions are very important. The Chandrayaan-1 series, Chandrayaan-2, the Chandrayaan-3 are really hailed as some of the best in this lot, with the discovery of water on moon and continued estimation of various elemental composition of the moon, high resolution images of moon from Chandrayaan-2. Chandrayaan-3 has just accomplished a feat of landing, soft landing on the southern side of the moon, which is very remarkable, the unique one for India. The AstroSat, which is an observatory that we have placed in the space for multispectral observation of celestial events, which has produced huge scientific outcome. The Mars Orbiter mission was also one of the very excellent missions which lasted almost 8 years studying about the Mars and extensively. And we have an array of series of scientific missions, including the study of the Sun through the Aditya L1, X-ray polarimeter satellite, all coming up in the coming days. The Gaganyaan program to look at the human spaceflight possibility by creating launch vehicles which are capable of taking this human-rated launch vehicle. The technologies which are required for them are currently being developed for crew modules, crew escape system, and we are going to start the major test programs coming next month. And many of the technology elements that are created for it is through collaborative work with international agencies, national agencies, and this is something that we look forward in the coming days to expand our cooperation with various other nations, because human exploration is not limited to one nation alone. It must be a joint effort, because space belongs to all, and we look forward the players like Korea, where they will be able to support in terms of the high technological content of their research work in this area. Industry participation has been an excellent development. Over the past, we were able to participate almost 80% of the components, materials, manufacturing of our rockets through industry. But this continues to remain as an issue for spacecrafts, where the participation industry still remains low, and we would like to expand it, especially with a very strong electronic industry background in Korea. This is a possibility to have higher levels of industrial collaboration, building electronics devices, components, circuits, and cards for spacecraft purpose in the future. The new Space India is something very important, and we are looking at opening of the space sector with a goal to expand the economy substantially in the coming days, where we will look at how government-driven space activity is now going to go to the industry-driven space activity, especially in the operational regime, and all the R&D and research activity will continue to work more concentrated by the ISRO. Of course, it should happen in other establishments as well. The public sector undertaking NSIL will take charge of most of the production operational systems where the research content is lower. The InSpace will look at the non-governmental entities for them to be enabled to do the research and development of new systems, innovative systems, especially in the domain of industries and startups, where they need hand-holding and support from ISRO, will be routed, channeled through InSpace. So we look at various other policy matters, which I will describe later, specifically related to FDI, creation of joint ventures and strategic partnership in the domain of space activity. We believe that if you do all of this, the expansion of the business in space sector will substantially improve with larger number of technologies that will move to the industries. The scale of activities in India, especially in the domain of manufacturing, innovation, research, for the global players will happen. And we will become a manufacturing hub and also the creator of new technologies in a very, very low cost-effective manner. And for this, we are looking for private-public partnership models to come out so as to sustain it. And we look at robust regulation domain, because space now, when it is open to more than one player, like the government player becoming multiplayer system, regulation becomes important, and also important authorization and promotion becomes important. And InSpace is created with promotion and authorization as their main mandates. And this created a large startup ecosystem, industry ecosystem to develop here. And one of the important accomplishments has been the launch of a private satellite launch vehicle, suborbital launch, that happened recently. And many more players are coming up, especially in the domain of rocket building and satellite building. And we look at how the space policy framework can be created. And 2023, we made the first national space policy, and it also looks at various elements of this policy, which describes how we will enable the roles of each of those arms of Department of Space to make it happen. And it contains various elements: access the space data, enabling provisions for private players to come into this, authorization, and also the government's responsibility as far as space activities are concerned. Space continues to remain as an area where sustainability has to be addressed in a big manner, especially with the large number of satellites coming up and new LEO constellations coming up. And we would like to look at the sustainability, the debris issue, and how to remain greener in space, especially with the rockets and also with spacecrafts, which should not clutter and damage our future exploration. For that, space situational awareness become important, and ISRO is dedicated to work on this domain in collaboration with various players, especially observation, computation, and mitigation measures are to be taken in a continuous manner to keep this for entire humanity. We have been offloading the production of most of our capability to the industries, and industries have come forward taking great interest in the recent times. It only shows that the possibility of doing business in new sectors like building rockets and launches originally done by ISRO can be done totally with full responsibility transfer to the industry with, of course, ISRO's technological backing from that for those endeavors. And this is a very important change. And it's always an important change, which I mentioned earlier, the new players coming up. Some of the private spacecrafts, some of the private rocket engines testing and launches, which has actually created so much of stir in the whole of this, and a lot of investment are coming into this. And this is an area where the industries, companies in Korea can look at how to support these startups, possibly jointly developing some of this capability, which will be beneficial for both India and Korea. We are looking at developing newer models of rocket building, especially the reusable rockets, bringing down the cost of production, new manufacturing and processes, the funding mechanisms, and also building spacecrafts which are publicly funded so as to generate more revenue out of such models. So both building rockets as well as satellite building could move away from the government-owned operations to a joint missions or public-private partnership models where industry can become stakeholders and they can market the potential for potential customers in the future. We also concentrate on research and development in many areas like the materials development, the technology development, and also the operational system making, including various elements for Gaganyaan exploration, new topics like docking, new topic like refueling, robotic activities in space. Of course, air breathing and reusability becomes very important in the future. So many such technology elements are currently getting developed, and we would also look at how these technology elements can be developed in private sector as well. Our target is in the next 25 years. Our Honorable Prime Minister described it as the Amrit Kal. We should be able to substantially increase the numbers like this. The scale of the economy should grow to a substantial number. The launch rates should improve. The share of the private companies should significantly improve. And we will also look at how top global space companies, especially in the domain of service sector, also ground infrastructure and operational services can be created in India with the support of the currently enabled space ecosystem in India. We look at the various aspects of this in a manner that the three important domains of communication, Earth observation, navigation will feed to the changed lifestyle of the people in this country and the world, especially with the communication being very, very personal now and new modes of communication coming in. It has to revolutionize to to a level that is needed. Earth observation and information gathering and dissemination becomes very important with newer and newer technologies coming into spacecraft, especially to deal with the areas like agriculture and infrastructure planning, transporting, fishing, database services, weather, climate, and etc. Navigation, the PNT services become an integral part of all the business activities, especially with the Industry 4.0 coming. And it is also co-work with the rest of the EO and communication systems so as to complement them and support them in various activities. So it becomes a space highway for the common good. And this is what we would look like the space sector to grow. And many cooperative activities are possible with the engineering skill and capability of Korea in many other domains. And we find that the earlier work that you did in building satellites, the joint launches that we did between ISRO and Korea, all will pave way for the future collaboration of making them together for the common good of both the nations. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Okay. Thank you very much for your insightful speech and sharing us with the great vision of Indian space development. Now let's move on to the Korea side leader, Dr. Sang-Yul Lee, the president of Korea Aerospace Research Institute. His title is National Space Program of Korea. Please welcome Dr. Lee with big applause. Please.
Good morning. My name is Sang-Yul Lee. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I tried to share the screen. Okay. Okay, my name is Sang-Yul Lee. I'm the president of KARI. Thank you for the INAE and the NEC president, and thank you for the Dr. Somanas for the complete presentation of the ISRO and the Indian space activities. Also, the congratulations that you listened to Chandrayaan, the lunar landing. I prepared the Korea's the national space program. It will cover about the 30 years of our achievement. The presentation is limited, but we can find many other collaboration area here. I will present at first with the KARI activities because KARI played the major role in Korean national space development. Our national space governance is at the top level. There is a National Space Council. It will be chaired by our national president. Before it was at the prime minister level, and it will be escalated. Our major ministry will be MSIT, and KARI will play the major role as the government-funded institute. KARI's the vision and the goal is we would like to realize Korea's dream toward the sky and space.
Excuse
and
me, President Lee.
hello?
Could you share us the presentation file? We don't see the presentation file together. Okay.
Sorry. No. You see or not?
Not yet.
Sorry, it's just something is wrong. When I did the rehearsal, it worked. Can you see or not?
No, not yet, but then even without slides, your presentation was very clear. We were able to follow you.
But I don't know why I
If you send us the file, then
yeah, I sent a file, but when I did the rehearsal this morning, it worked, but
okay.
I don't know why. I don't know how. 잘 안 돼. 아니 화면 공유를 못 하겠네 내가.
발표 자료를 아니면
발표 자료.
원장님
아니,
저희가
보냈어.
공유할까요? 저희가 넘겨드릴까요?
네, 이쪽에서 넘겨드려도 될 것 같은데요. 그냥 말씀을 쭉 하시면 저희가 대강 그 비슷한 내용으로 해서 넘기면 되지 않을까요?
예, 그렇게 하겠습니다. 그러면 예.
네. 아, 그래요?
네, 어떻게?
원장님께서 해주셔야 된다고.
아, 죄송합니다. 현장에서 지금 안 된다고 하네요. 아,
아니. 좋죠.
화면 공유 지금 누르셨나요?
됐는데 왜안 되는지
누르시고
모르겠네. 아,
그냥 그 말씀으로 하셔도 될 것 같습니다. 네.
그렇게
자료
할까요?
없이. 네.
예, 죄송합니다. 이거.
네, 괜찮습니다. 네.
Yeah, I'm sorry for this inconvenience. Okay, the current the employees about the 1100 about the 80% is the engineer and the technician, and our annual budget will be about the 500 million US dollar, and we have 6 major functions: the aeronautics, satellite, space launch vehicle, space exploration, and the utilization of satellite information and satellite navigation. We have, I think, the quite common area with the Indian Space Research the organization, and again, I think we can find that many collaboration area. Our main facility is located in Daejeon. It's the central of the South Korea. At Daejeon, we have a satellite test center, also the ground station, and also the aeronautical full-scale airframe test facility and wind tunnel test center, things like that. Recently, we established the Korea Deep Space antenna, and our narrow space center. We have our launch site, also the mission operations center and tracking radar, and the Gong area. We have another aviation center, and the Jeju Island. We have the satellite operations center and the tracking center. Also, we have a global ground network to do our satellite operation more efficient way. We have some facility in the German Neustrelitz and Antarctic area, Svalbard, and the Palau Station and Wino Island. Courage R&D achievement is mainly the 3 domain. First, the space launch vehicle, and then satellite and the aeronautics. I have the summary slide in page 11, if you can see. That is our achievement. For the launch vehicle, our first launch vehicle was developed in collaboration with Russia. It was called the KSLV-1, or the narrow launch vehicle. It was launched 3 times, and the January 2013 was a success. And but since the March 2010, we tried to develop the KSLV-2 Nuri. We actually launched the 3 times. The first launch was October 21. It was not complete success. The satellite didn't reach orbit due to the third stage, the didn't the burn completely. The second launch, the June 22, and the third launch, the May 23, was the all success. And we have 3 additional launches in the 25, 26, 27. Maybe later on we will continue our KSLV2, but this year we started to develop our next generation, the KSLV3 launch vehicle, which will send our Korean lunar lander. It's much behind than the Indian plan, but it's about 2032 we will send our lunar lander using our next generation launch vehicle. It can send about the 1.8 ton lander class to the moon. Yeah. For the satellite case, we developed many LEO and the geostationary satellite. Maybe most of the successful program was the COMSAT, called COMSAT, Korea Multipurpose Satellite. We launched 5 of the COMSAT up to now, the starting COMSAT on December 99, and the COMSAT to the June 2006. Both the COMSAT 1 and COMSAT 2 completed the mission, but now the 3, 5 and 3A are still in orbit. Usually it operates more than 2 times or 3 times than the originally planned mission life. We developed also the 500 kilogram class standard platform to transfer the technology to Korean industry. For the geostationary satellite, our first satellite, the COMS, was launched June 2010. But under Kari's responsibility, we developed the GeoComSat 2A and the 2B successfully. And in particular, the GeoComSat 2A, I remember it was launched in December 2018 together with the Indian GSAT-11. I think we launched it, our satellite using Ariane 5 in 2018. Also, that was for meteorological mission, but we can also do the East Asia, the environmental East Asia, the environmental, the monitoring, also the worldwide, the ocean monitoring. Our under development satellite is the GeoComSat 3, which is supposed to be launched at 2027, but it's not shown here, but we can also launch KPS the 2027, same year, but it's a different the platform. So the COMSAT 6, COMSAT 7 Earth observation high resolution satellite will be launched the next year, the end of 2025. We started to develop our Korean positioning system. This is also the regional satellite navigation system, similar to the Indian program. We will use the 5 IGSO satellites and the 3 GEO satellites, in total 8 satellites. And first satellite to be launched in 2027, and it will be completed by 2035. It will be the GPS compatible, but we will have also our own navigation signal in the S-band and the L6 band. Next slide, please. We are doing also the satellite-based augmentation system, KASS, that is using the GPS signal. It will be completed this year. Maybe the starting service is 2024 or 2025. So we will establish the Korea's integrated the space-based augmentation system infrastructure. We complete our reference station, operation center, uplink station, and the geo satellite. We will have the one geo satellite, and the second geo satellite will be prepared in 2025, and the system qualification review will be done this November, so it's almost done. Next, please. In last year, we sent out the Korea Pathfinder Lunar Orbital KPLO. It was launched in August, and lunar orbit insertion took place in December 22, and it started the mission operation this year. Originally, the mission life is 1 year, but it was decided to be extended until 2025. So we will do the 3-year mission. So it is the technology, the demonstration, or the scientific investigation, the program, and then the 2032 we have a plan to send the lunar orbital. Next, please. In this the KPLO Danuri, we have the 6 payload, 3 camera, and 1 gamma ray spectrometer, and 1 magnetometer, and 1 the DTN payload. Yeah, next, please. So that's a summary of our space exploration plan. The page 1 KPLO, and page 2 is the lunar lander and rover. Page 3, we are targeting the Mars lander in 2045. Next, please. We are also the participating in Artemis program, and Korea was the 10th the country to sign the Artemis Accord in the May 2021. Next, please. For the aeronautical area, we are developing the eVTOL, the optionally piloted the personal air vehicle, and also we are developing the unmanned vehicle core technology for the air and also in the land and even the underwater. Yeah, next, please. Okay, I'll summarize our national space program. Yeah, next, please. So after the successful launch of the Nuri-2, the president visited Kari, and he announced the new vision for space economy, and it will change our next phase space development program. So space will be the key to the national competitiveness, and also we will expand the space sector through the new challenges. Next, please. So future space economy roadmap, we have a 6 political plan, space exploration, global space power, and space industry, space talent in terms of human relation, human resources, and space security and the international cooperation. And also, as I said earlier, President will chair the National Space Committee, and also in 2032 moon landing and 2045, we will have a plan to land on Mars. Next, please. So after the government announced the fourth basic plan for promotion of space development, we have the three goals: expansion of space exploration and enhanced space investment, and also the creation of the commercial space industry. Before it was focused on the technology, the research and development. In the next phase, we will focus on the commercial space economy. And also we will do the space industry cluster in Daejeon and the Jeonnam and Gyeongnam area. And Daejeon will be as a think tank, and also the satellite and the launch vehicle industry will be installed in the other province. Yeah, next, please. So we will have a new governance. Up to now, the CARI was the focal plane to develop the space the technology, but the space becomes not only the technology, it will influence many other areas. And the government decided as a national agenda, the number 79, government reformation to advance the governance with expertise and the leadership and R&D, also the national security, industry, and the international cooperation. So based upon this, there was the future space economy roadmap. It was announced by the president of the Korea, and also the preparatory office for the Korea administration for space and the aeronautics. So if the CASA is created, there will be some change in role of CARI, and CASA will be created, the external government agency under the Ministry of Science and ICT. And this is simply say the Korean version of NASA, but emphasizing expertise and the flexibility and the diffusibility. Yeah, next, please. Yeah, thank you. That's all my presentation, and sorry about the inconvenience with the presentation slide. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lee, for your nice speech. And due to technical problem, the slideshow was not fully shown, but for the recorded version, we'll try to make a synchronized video and audio together. So don't worry too much. We'll show more of the full version of CARI activity. And from two leaders of the space organization, we see that space is the way to go, and space will be very crowded in the future. A lot of satellite and activities will be there. So this wrap up the keynotes. Then now let's move on to the first session. So the first technical session host will be shared with Professor Sanjay Mittal of India. So let me introduce Professor Sanjay Mittal, and then he will continue and we'll share the host together. Please, Professor Sanjay Mittal.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I work at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, in the Aerospace Engineering Department. Before we start the session, I would like to let you know that in the following sessions, we'll be able to take up some questions. But since the time is limited, the request is to leave the questions in the chat, and we'll take up some of the questions and let the speakers know. I also request that while making the presentations, the presenters may kindly turn the camera on so that the audience can see them. And you may kindly mute your microphone when you're not speaking. So maybe I now request the co-chair to introduce our next speaker, for the session.
Okay, thank you, Professor Mitter. So now the first speaker is Dr. Tae-Kwan Kim, the Director of the Lunar Exploration Project of Korea Aerospace Research Institute. The title of his speech is Development and Journey of Korea, Pathfinder Lunar Orbiters. Please, Dr. Kim.
Okay. So can you see my presentation screen and
Yes, we can. Yeah.
hear my
Very
voice?
nice. Yeah,
Okay, thank
very
you.
well.
Okay, thank you, Chairman, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Dae-Kwan Kim. Firstly, I would like to congratulate you all on the successful landing of Chandrayaan-3 on the south pole of the moon. Actually, I was watching the landing scene on that day using the internet broadcast. I think it was really great achievement, not just for your team, but for all human beings. So congratulations once again. The title of my presentation is Development and Journey of our Korea Pathfinder Lunar Orbiter. I'm so honored to have this opportunity to share my presentation with you in this session today. I'm gonna briefly introduce overview our KPLO so that you can understand how we develop the KPLO and how we send it to the moon and what it's doing on the moon now. So I hope this time will be of service for you to understand our capital in more detail. As Dr. Lee he mentioned already in his presentations, Korean government officially announced the promotion of Korea space development. According to its roadmap and basic plan, our space exploration has 3 steps. The first one is first page is Lunar Orbiter in 2022. It is capital. And the next one is the Korean Lunar Lander by 2032. And the third is Mars Lander by 2045. So the KPLO is the first exploration steps in Korea to enhance the lunar exploration technology and scientific investigation. KPLO stands for the Korea Pathfinder Lunar Orbiter. Its Korean name is Danri. As I mentioned earlier, it's Korea's first space exploration mission. The development period was from 2016 to March of this year, and its mission orbit is lunar polar orbit with 100 kilometer altitude from the moon surface. Its launch date was August 5th, 2022. Its initial mission life is 1 year, but recently we extended the mission life for 2 more years, thanks to some remaining fuel. And it has a total of 6 payloads. Their mission objective is to demonstration and scientific investigation for the moon, not only for the moon, but also deep space exploration. In this slide, you can see the KPL configurations. The left one is stored case, and right one is deployed case. The total launch mass is 678 kilogram, and each fuel is 260 kilogram. In ground conditions, the KPL is stored in wrapped case, so the dimension is almost 2 meters for all 3 axes. But after separation from the launch vehicle, the 3 components of the satellites are deployed like this. First one is solar array, and second is magnet boom, and last one is high gain antenna. So its dimension is extended up to 6 meters along the solar array axis, and 3 meters for the other 2 axes. KPRO has 6 payloads for its lunar exploration mission. First one is 제6회, developed by NASA. The objective of this camera is to investigate the permanent shadow region on the both north and south pole of the moon. So using the data, we expect we can find out some water in form of ice. And second one is wide-angle polarimetric camera. This camera take polarimetric image and titanium map of the moon surface, not only near side but also far side, all of the moon surface. And the next one is lunar terrain imager. We call it LUTI. This is developed by our CARI. It takes high resolution lunar surface image. Using this data, so we will find out some our possible landing site for our next Korean lunar lander project. This picture was taken of the moon captured by this LUTI on December 24th in 2022. And the next one is DTMPL, Delayed Tolerance Network Experiment Payload. This payload to demonstrate the interplanetary internet communication technique, not only the moon, but also in space. And the next one is KGRS. This is gamma ray spectrometer. It measures the distribution, chemical distribution of the major surface elements on the moon. And the last one is KMAG, magnetometer. This sensor measures the magnetic strength of the lunar environment. This slide shows the overview of the KPO integration and testing process. In the middle of 22, CARI started the integration of flying units, and by September 21, the entire system integration was complete, and then some space environment tests was performed. These tests included the thermal vacuum, dynamic, and EMC test and so on. And all this environment test and final preparation was finished until by the middle of 22. All the integration and testing activities were conducted at this CARI specialized satellite integration and test facility, just as with our other satellite programs. I'm going to show you some video clips for the KPO integration environment test. In this phase, we complete all mechanical and electrical integrations. This shows the shadow cam integration. After these integrations, the whole system integration of the KPO is complete. And then we perform the thermal vacuum test. This test is to ensure that the satellite will sustain both extremely hot and cold temperature in space. And measuring the final system mass property. Sorry, there is a, oops. Okay. Sorry, I have some problem in my presentation, so I will try it again. Sorry. Okay. So. Okay. Can you see this screen and can you listen me? So can I start again?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry for the inconvenience for this. I will skip some. Yeah, okay. The measuring the finite system mass property is very critical. So accurate assessment for the mass and center of gravity is very critical. So this picture shows the launch vehicle adapter separation shock test. This test simulated the mechanical shock that the satellite will experience during the separation from the launch vehicle. This every adapter is the actual flight model. It used in our KPO launch case. And the Bible test is one of the main important environment tests. So this test is to check if the satellites will sustain, will withstand the intensive mechanical vibrations during the launch period. And radiated EMC tests were conducted in our EMC chamber. The objective of this test is to check out the electric component of the whole system don't have any interference with each other's operations. And also there is no degradation of whole system performance. And this is the solar deployment test. In this test, to compensate the ground gravity, so we use the zero gravity device for this test like this. After all the environment tests, the KPO, the final preparation at Kari was complete in the middle of 22. And the continuous communication with the KPO in the space and moon, we need at least 3 deep space antennas. So we developed the Korean deep space antenna at Yeoju in South Korea. And also we using 3 NASA deep space networks antenna in Goldstone and Madrid and Canberra. These 3 NASA DSN antenna will support KPO communication until the end of each mission. And this slide shows the KDSA development process. The main reflector dimension is almost 35 meters in diameter, and its height is 45 meters from the ground. This deep space antenna supports the S-band and X-band up and down link frequency band like this. This is the first and largest deep space antenna in South Korea. So I think you can guess how big it is by this picture. Okay. After final preparation at Kari, we transport our KPO to the launch site at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We started our launch campaign from July 6, 2022 until the date of launch. During this launch campaign, all ground preparations were conducted not only for the KPO but also the launch vehicle. In this launch campaign, we first transport our KPO to the launch site, and then we performed all ground inspection and test to prepare the launch. And also, you can see the every logo printed in on the pairing surface, and we finalized the ground preparations before launch. After integrating this satellite capital with this LV adapter. Actually, this LV adapter is the same one that used in our LV separation test at CARI. After that, the capital was encapsulated with the LV pairings, and the all aspects of launch campaigns are completed after this capital launch. And in this slide, I will discuss the capital transport method from the Earth to the Moon. In the beginning of our design phase, we first selected paging loop method to transfer capital to the Moon. But at the times, we encountered a pure inefficiency issue due to capital being overweight. So to mitigate the pure problem, we changed our transfer method from the paging loop to the BLT method. BLT stands for the ballistic lunar transfer. This method is not easy to design, and also it takes much longer to reach the Moon, but it allows us to save some fuel. So this picture illustrates the 40 different BLT trajectories for different departure dates. The departure date is selectable between the August 1st to September 9th, but the allowed date at the Moon is fixed on 12/16 and December 16, like this. So the capital fly to the Earth, Sun, then it returned to the Moon and Earth, and in the middle of December, it reached the Moon, and finally it entered its lunar orbit mission at the end of the December. So our capital launched on August 5th, and finally it entered the lunar mission orbit on December 27th, taking almost 5 months. So from this slide, I will explain some a major event that occurred during this BLT trajectory. On August 5th, the capital was successfully launched from the SLC-40 launch pad. The lift warp occurred at exactly 8:08 a.m., which was the exact time planned for the launch. And after 41 minutes, the capital was separated from the launch vehicle. And actually, this separation is very critical step to establish the BLT trajectory, because the initial condition of the BLT trajectory is decided by the separation result. So if a separation error have occurred, then it would have required a lot of fuel to compensate for it. But in our case, the separation was executed very successfully, so we were able to save some remaining fuel. And after 4 minutes, our solar panels were deployed like this as a programmed onboard computer. From this time on, the KPL began generating electric power from the sunlight. And 2 days after KPL launched, we performed the post trajectory correction maneuver, TCM1. It is not the mandatory maneuver. It's just rather a test to check out the status of propulsion system. The test was quite good. And on August 26th, we performed the post-lunar routine verification test. During this test, the camera was oriented to the both the moon and Earth. This is the first image captured by the routine. You can see the moon and Earth captured together. So actually, this image is very impressive to our entire team. So it made us have more confidence in success of our KPL mission. And then September 2nd, we performed the second trajectory correction maneuver. This maneuver is deterministic one. So to correct the BLT trajectory to desired our path. So the result was quite good. And then for 1 month, from September 14th to October 14th, we took a series of pictures of both the Earth and Moon. So you can see the Earth at the center of this image, and also you can see the Moon that is rotating around the Earth like this. So I think, as far as I know, this image, this is the world first image capturing the Moon's rotation around the Earth. And September 24th, we took some images consecutively every 20 minutes. So the maximum distance is 1.55 million kilometers from the Earth. And we performed the DTN verification test on October 28th. In this test, the BTS Dynamite music video was transported from the capital to the Earth. In this test, we used 3 DTN nodes in DSN, CARI, and E3. So from this test, we can find out that the transmitted data were received very well, and the music video was replayed very smoothly at the end of the DTN node at E3. And we performed the third TCM correction maneuver successfully. Then the post-traction correction maneuver was executed on November 16. Actually, before the launch, we have prepared for total of 9 TCM to correct this BLT trajectory. But as you can see, these 4 TCM were successfully executed, so we were able to cancel the other 5 TCMs. So actually, this is the another significant reason why we can save some more additional fuel. And this picture shows the moon and Earth. Actually, at the times, the capital moon and Earth align like this. So this moon appears almost the same size as the Earth. And then the capital finally arrived the moon in the middle of December. And then to enable capital to be captured by the moon's gravity, it is necessary to reduce the kinetic energy of the capital. So we performed the first lunar orbit insertion using the delta V of 260 meter per sec. After the first lunar orbit insertion, we achieved this an elliptical lunar orbit with a period of 12 hours. And then we prepared to second lunar orbit insertion on December 21st. For this maneuver, we combined LY number 2 and LY number 5 together, and the total delta V is 260 meters. After the second burn, we achieved this smaller elliptical lunar orbit with the period of 30.6 hours. And then we finally performed the last lunar orbit insertions. For this maneuver, we combined the LY number 4 and LY number 5 together, and the delta V was 248 meter per second. So after the last LY burnt, we finally achieved this lunar mission orbit with a period of 2 hours. And this slide shows the Earth and Moon captured by the RUTI on December 24th, sorry. And in January of this year, we have the commissioning page to assess both the payload performance and the status of satellites. During that period, the capital captured the Earth's changing pace as observed from the Moon. And this is the geoscopic crater. So the sensor peak is clearly visible in this picture. The maximum height is almost 3.2 kilometers. And from this slide, I will show you some recent current output from our capital payload. The routine captured the Artemis A crater. It located in North Pole. It has a largest permanent shadow region, and also it is expected to have a large volume of water in form of ice. And next one is Amundsen crater, which is located in South Pole. Recently, NASA has identified 13 possible landing sites for their Artemis projects. So the rim of this crater is one of the candidate location. And ProCam captured the image of Rhino Gamma swell. This is most well-known magnetic anomaly region on the Moon. The higher albedo pattern is clearly visible in this image. And after this year, the capital will release the polarimetric image of the entire lunar surface. And KGRS measured the gamma ray signal emitted from the lunar surface using 3 months of data. The team created the Korean first lunar thorium distribution map. This is only just initial data. The team planned to release some chemical distribution map for at least 5 major elements from the beginning of next year. And KMAG magnetometer is designed to measure the bedweak magnetic field signal around the Moon. So the duty cycle of this payload is 100. That means this sensor is measuring the magnetic field at all times on the Moon. Last one is shadow cam. The one of interesting crater that has permanent shadow region on the South Pole is Second crater. This second crater is also expected to have a lot of water in form of ice, and it also the one of the landing candidate for the Artemis mission. KPRO also captured this crater using the RUTI like this. But as you can see, the permanent region inside, we can see that it is invisible. But when we employ the shadow cap, we can see the inside like this. This is the close-up view of this area. You can see the bottom pattern in detail. Okay, this is the last one that I prepared to explain our capital mission schedule. So capital was launched and successfully arrived at the Moon at the end of last year. Following that, we have the commission phase in January, and capital is now in nominal mission process here. So as I mentioned earlier, we were able to save some additional fuel during the transport phase. So thanks to the Save the Fuel, currently we extended our capital missions until the end of 25. So now the time is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim, for this wonderful lecture. We learned a lot about the development of the Lunar Pathfinder program, and it was also very educational. Your videos for students on the different phases of the program. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
We now move on to the next talk of the session, and I have great pleasure in inviting Professor Devasis Ghosh. He's a professor in the Department of Aerospace Engineering at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, which is one of the premier institutes in our country. His area of interest is generally guidance and control of aerospace systems. He's one of the leading experts from the academia in this area. And the title of his talk is going to be Small Satellite Development in India, Challenges and Opportunity. So would you please welcome Professor Ghosh with a big round of applause.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible, and kindly share your screen if you can, please.
Yes.
Great. We can see your screen and we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you, INAE and NAEK for inviting me to this session. It's a pleasure to be a speaker in this very august gathering. Before I start, I would like to mention that my association with Korea goes back long way down. It's more than 25 years when I first visited Korea. I visited various universities there, lectured, and so on. So I have very good friends in Korea, and I'm very well aware of the great achievements that the Korean scientists and educators have made in the area of science and technology. So today it's my pleasure to talk about the development of small satellites in this in India. So essentially, the recent Chandrayaan-3's amazing success story has put India back in the space map where everyone is talking about what has happened in India and how the ISRO could achieve something so stupendous. The story of what ISRO did goes back many years. And the basis of all this is the amazing science and technology that took place in the space arena in our country. There have been many offshoots of all this, and that is what my talk is going to be. So just a few minutes ago, at the beginning of this session, you listened to Mr. Somnath, the chairman of ISRO, about the development period of ISRO and how it went through various failures and successes and then came to a point where it can now hold its own. So the early developments in the ISRO, I will not go into details of that. So there were satellite launches during the 60s and 2000, between 60 and 2000, by ISRO, by others who launched Indian satellites for them. The applications were mainly in the area of communication, weather, climate, and so on. During that time, the Indian academia played a very important supporting role for ISRO activities. In fact, I cannot help but mention that one of the institutes that played a major role in what happened in ISRO and its programs was the Indian Institute of Science, from where I come. and also specifically the Department of Aerospace Engineering. There have been many visionary leaders in ISRO who have done wonderful work, but one person among them stands out, that is Satish Dhawan, whom you can see in a picture there, who was actually the director of ISC from 62 to 81. And while he was a director, he also took over the job of the ISRO chairman from 72 to 84. And during this time, many programs were initiated, many successes were achieved. And what is important about this whole thing is that he provided a sort of leadership which was quite unique in our country. One of the things that he did was to get the projects reviewed by not just eminent scientists, but also by people who have just joined the space research area in different academic institutes. The advantage of taking a decision of involving all these people was far-reaching. It was not just that the experts reviewed to find whether the missions were good or they needed some improvement, but the more important contribution of this is to create a feeling and disseminating the nature of the technology that ISRO was developing in its research centers. This was transforming to the Indian industry that was slowly getting into space. So as ISRO gained experience and strength, it also during the 2000, that is in this present century, it had PSLV and GSLV launches, and it achieved great successes. Other countries approached ISRO for their launch, and launches through other countries' programs also continued in this. The main thing that I feel happened, apart from the successful launches that ISRO did, were the expansion into the private sector. So there was a direction to privatize or encouragement to private sectors to contribute to and profit from space applications. So this thing started with a small program, which were nano satellites by students. So ISRO threw open its doors to student groups and universities to actually design satellites, design the payloads, and so on. But the effect of all this was that these youngsters now went ahead and started their space tech startups so that they can provide many profitable services in using satellites. So two major thrusts that appear in this is making of small satellites and developing of satellite-based services. Both had the potential to expand into the international market. Now, if we look at the student satellite program, it started mainly with the launch of Chandrayaan-1, which increased the interest of universities and institutions in making experimental satellites. ISRO played a mentoring role in encouraging these educational institutes and helped them to create payloads that could be used for remote sensing, astronomy, and so on. Technical guidance in designing and fabrication were provided by ISRO. And finally, the designs and test results are also reviewed by the ISRO team. So these projects, the student satellite projects, encompass design and development of electronics, associated algorithms, experiments, and so on, that could be flown in the ISRO's small satellites. Many universities and students in India participated in these ventures. The current statistics is that if you look at the space tech scenario and the startups that came out of this, there are nearly 140 space tech startups right in India that have come out of all these activities. And remember that many of these are started by people who participated in student satellite projects, often mentored by ISRO scientists. So this was I would say, one of the greatest scientific outreach programs of any institute in India that created such a startup industry in India by just mentoring young scientists and engineers. So in this talk, I will talk about a few of these startups that provided service and products that are valuable to space industries, and not just in India, but also all over the world. But before I talk about some of these companies, I would tender a sincere apology that I'm not going to cover all the companies that have done wonderful work here. I will take only a few of them for certain reasons. So there are certain applications in space products that are almost kind of obvious. For example, if you look at remote sensing. But then what do you do with the data? So the companies that I'm going to talk about are people who thought in a very innovative way to fill the gaps that were existing in space tech, and also innovative ways of using this to create business platforms. So let's start with one company, which is Astrom. This company was actually incubated in the Indian Institute of Science by students who were students of IIC, Indian Institute of Science. So this is called Astrom, and their main objective when they started was to provide high-speed broadband internet from the space. In India, high-speed internet was available only in the urban areas, and the aim of this project or this proposal was to extend this availability to rural areas which were infrastructure deficit. And this was done via advanced high-throughput satellites, and the objective was to provide quality education, healthcare, and government services. So some of the products that Astrom proposed were customized ground stations. This is meant for, let us say that a company has a constellation of LEO or GEO satellites, then they propose to create a ground station that would be perfectly aligned with the customer needs of these constellations. So these customization of the protocols to get the best performance was a service that they provided. There was an end-to-end support to design for LEO and MEO constellation support and creating a business plan for them using these ground terminals. One of their products was called GigaSat. It is essentially a flat panel satellite terminal which supports communication in multiple frequencies. The idea behind this is to provide a high-speed terminal that can be used for LEO and MEO constellations, for mobility terminals for GEO satellites as well. They also had another product called SpaceNet. It's a fully software-defined payload technology for satellite constellations, and the objective is that this infrastructure would be cheap and affordable to the extent that it would be 10 times lower in price than the current and upcoming constellations all over the world. The second company that I want to talk about is called SatSure. This is a company in Bangalore, and they do something very, very interesting indeed. India has a very large agricultural community, and its agriculture market is massive. So a natural question to ask is that how can satellite technology help the agriculture market? One of the standard things that people say is that remote sensing of agricultural fields can tell you about the crop, about the health of the crop, yield prediction, and so on. These are very standard things. But how do you actually use it? This is where the company SatSure came up with some very, very innovative ideas that other companies who are interested in agri-tech found very interesting. So essentially, SatSure talked about cutting-edge satellite remote sensing using machine learning and AI. So these are deep tech solutions for global sustainability challenges. So they built scalable applications for ag tech and climate tech. And let us see, we will concentrate only on the agricultural technology because that is something that is very close to the heart of India. So they produced a data product platform which hosted analytical data products derived from satellite imagery, machine learning, and big data analytics to offer actionable insights and decision-making support across industries. What kind of services would this give? Apart from the obvious, what they asked for is the use of this data in various capacities. For example, in government and multilateral organizations, FMCGs, commodities market, crop production, and more interestingly, in the insurance sector. So essentially what they did is that they used this data and brought it to banks and other institutions to tell them what kind of agri-tech financing they can do to small farmers in certain areas so that they are assured of profit and the small farmers can have a third party to support their ventures in terms of telling the banking institutes that we are going to be successful. So this advantage that this Satsure people gave to the banking institutions made them confident of investing. The insurance sector is also benefiting from their input because they would know what kind of risks are they running in supporting farmers through insurance and whether there are the places where the insured farmer risk is less or more. So these are very important inputs that do not come from the farmer, but they come from a third party and can be very reassuring to banks. So there are a lot of banks who are now approaching this company to tell them where to invest, what kind of insurances they can take out, and so on. So they also do a remote crop loan portfolio monitoring, crop loan underwriting. Then there is a Sage application which looks at the insights. They give you insights about the crop loan and how to increase your work there, how to increase your profitability and so on. This next company that I'm going to talk about is Pixel. In fact, many of these companies were also featured in the ISRO chairman's talk because these are the offshoots of what ISRO would provide. So the Pixel came to the market with an idea of providing very high resolutions hyperspectral imaging using small satellites. In fact, they claim to be the world's highest resolution imagery that they can provide. So this data is something that you can use to build a sustainable future. So this sustainable development will, of course, also encompass agriculture. It will also measure climate risks such as flooding, famine, and wildfire. These are things that are happening because of the climate change. We are all aware of these, and they are creating concern all over the country. Energy, for extracting, surveying and extraction of different types of energy from the planet Earth, we need to know what is available. We need to know whether it is proving to be a risk to the planet. If there are seepages, then how do you take care of those seepages? How do you identify them? If there is a oil spillage in the ocean, how do you detect these oil slicks? So these hyperspectral imagery can be used very effectively to do this. Then there is a quick assimilation of data and application of data from Earth's surface that can be used for various applications. For example, the mining application, where does the mining make sense, and so on. So you can map vast tracts of land very usefully. Then we come to another small satellite company. Till now, we were talking about companies that provided services, but now we have a company which actually builds satellites. So this is the Dhruva space. So Dhruva space have this series of satellites called Thibault 1 and Thibault 2, and they are used. Thibault 1 was used for amateur electronic people, but the main idea is that these spacecraft, these kind of satellites provide a compact and scalable platform that can be leveraged to house powerful processor and space-grade components for use. So the payloads used on the satellite as a novel store and forward payload, receiving messages from sensor nodes or remote control solution. It also stores the messages on board and then downlinks them. So this is a platform where nowadays people have understood that the bandwidth is a very important thing, because the data that satellites actually collect in space are of such huge volume that downloading them within the short time when the ground station is seeing the satellite is almost next to impossible. So people have now started talking about using what are known as edge computing, that is computing on the edge. So orbital edge computing is becoming a real application where the data is actually processed on the satellite itself before a smaller size of the data is conveyed down to the ground station. So this is the reason why high-speed processors in small satellites make a lot of sense. So in November 2020, an ISRO PSLV launch vehicle deployed the Thibault mission to validate its PDOT satellite platform and to enable many more amateur radio enthusiasts. So this was a actual test of what these satellites could do. So right now, the Dhruva Aerospace has 3 different types of satellite, which they have others in the anvil also, but these are 3 that are available. They go from as small as a 1 kg to 24 kgs to something that is up to 500 kgs. So CubeSat, NanoSat to Microsat. So when we talk about housing high power processor CPUs, then these higher side microsats would be ideal for housing such processing power. So I have covered only 4 of these startups. There are many, many more with very innovative ideas. But what is important to understand here is that Indian space startups have been doing deep technology work for several years now. And some of them have been successful. Some of them have been seen to be useful by many companies. However, we have a large number of startups and they need money. But till date, if you look at private investors, especially from the international market, they have been a bit reluctant to invest. This is where I think ISRO has changed the game completely. Now, if you look at the ISRO's successes that has happened in the last few years and the very recent one where they landed on the south pole of the moon, shows that Indian technology is as good as any, and the confidence in Indian technology has soared. And this is where we hope that private industries will now look at these space tech startups and know that they are driven by high technology ideas and they are serious platforms for investments. So this is a challenge that the space tech industry now has, and this is a very good thing that has happened with ISRO's landing on the moon, and it is time that they capitalize on this and attract more investment into their companies. So that brings us to the end of my talk. Some of the references and sources are from what you see here. And with this, I end my talk and thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Professor Ghosh. Okay, now let's move on to Q&A. So we have about 10 minutes of Q&A time. So first question to Professor Kim, approximately how much fuel is required per year to maintain the KPLO in its orbit? That's the question for Professor Kim.
Okay. Actually, it's not easy to the detailed information, but approximately at the beginning of this years, that means after capital reach its final lunar orbit missions, we estimate the remaining fuel. So at the times we evaluated that the remaining fuel is almost 86 kilograms. So based on the data, we estimate how long we can operate our KPLO. So, but at the times we don't have enough information because at the beginning of the years we need some more information. So how much we need to sustain our KPLO for 1 year, because we have planned before launch how much will be used on our orbit maintenance or momentum dumping and pre-maneuver, but it's just guess. But we need the actual number of fuel that used in our maneuver. So in the middle of this years, we estimate using our half of the year data. So until now, so we can guess. So actually, the requirement of fuel for each year is different because the orbit conditions are different. So this year is almost 26 kilograms, and next year is almost 32, and the last year is almost 30 about something. So using the current remaining fuel, the 86 kilograms, we expect that we can extend our capital missions for 2 more years. So my answer is the exact number of the fuel that used in the annual operation is not fixed, but we used almost 30 kilogram. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, this is first time for the Danuri's orbit in
Yes.
lunar orbit. So yeah, that's approximately 20-30 kilogram per year. So it will remain another 2-3 years on the orbit. Okay, so that's a very reasonable answer, I think. Okay, there is no other questions, but a question from myself, I guess. So people or many different countries try to land on south pole of moon, and I think that's because there are lots of ice and water. It can be used in the future for the human exploration. But is there any other possibility of North Pole? As you showed that there are craters in North Pole too. So I don't think everyone is jumping into the south pole of the moon, but someone will go to north and south and share together peacefully. Any idea on that? To Dr. Kim.
Okay. So as far as I know, so as I mentioned in my presentation, so recently the NASA identified their possible landing sites, 13 possible landing sites, only the South Pole, not North Pole. But as you mentioned, there are also the shadow region craters that has the shadow region on the North Pole. That means we can get some ice from the North Pole crater, but just I don't know why most people try to reach the South Pole. Maybe as far as I know, there are a lot of craters on the South Pole compared to the North Pole. So that means it will give us more chance to get some water. So that's the reason why we try to try to reach the South Pole first compared to the North Pole. So, and another thing is maybe spin axis, but I think this is not the true answer. It's just guess. Maybe the South Pole is more better to get the electric power from the sunlight. Maybe that is one of the reason why they choose the area to landing site. That's my guess.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kim. Yeah, to Dr. Ghosh, the cost of the Cube satellite, that's my question. So about 30 years ago when I was a graduate student, it was 50,000 US dollar. So that's a sending small CubeSat, students group, and I was part of the structure design, and then it was so fascinating. I see the the scenery of the oceans and by the small satellite on the orbit. But what is the today's cost of the CubeSat? General CubeSat with some simple sensors and the video cameras, and what is the effectiveness of Indian industry over other, for example, U.S. industry? Cost effectiveness or other technological effectiveness.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a very relevant question to this session. When the student satellite project began, it took off in various ways where in India, the universities were not really in a position to fund everything that is needed for the CubeSat. So ISRO actually provided many of these material that they needed. But the present situation when it comes to a company, the cost of the satellite depends on what kind of payload that it is carrying. But if you leave out the payload, I think the cost would be much less than the $50,000 that you are talking about. Depending on the low end, like 1 to 30 kg kind of thing, I would say that it could be about 10,000 US dollars or even less than that.
Okay, thank you very much. So we don't have any other question. I think this is wrap up for first two speakers. Thank you very much for your nice and very detailed information of the space programs, and then this detailed Danuris, the manufacturing, and then the orbiter activities and the Indian startup programs. Thank you again for Dr. Kim and Dr. Ghosh. Right, thank you. Okay, the next presenter from NIC is Professor Hyo-chung Pang. He's a professor at the Department of Aerospace Engineering. Oh, one more question? Oh, sorry. We just got one more question, so let's go back for a minute or so. So let me just, this is a question to Dr. Ghosh. Yeah, please, can you give some examples of application of AI, machine learning in satellite system? So, you showed some wording of AI, machine learning in satellite system, but please.
Okay. So, one of the very important application of AI and machine learning is in the image processing part of it. So I did mention the concept of orbital edge computing, where the processing has to be done on the satellite. So much of those algorithms are not based on traditional image processing algorithms. They are based on vision algorithm, based on machine learning and AI techniques, because those are faster. So you can train the whole network on ground and then fly them on the satellite. So that makes them very fast, very dependable, and the results of those are now sent back. So looking at the kind of processing power that these algorithms will need, it would be a fraction of the power that you would require with traditional algorithms. So I think this is one place where it is very, very important to have AI and machine learning algorithms, especially if you're trying to do these processing on board.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Okay, again, let's move on to next speaker, Professor Hyo-chung Bang of KAIST. KAIST is Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, is professor in Department of Aerospace Engineering. The title of his talk is Guidance and Navigation Technology for Space Debris Removal Mission. Yeah, please, Professor Bang.
Can you see my slide all right?
Yeah, it's okay, but that's more like not the presenting mode. I see the next slide together, so.
How about this?
Oh, now, yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon and good morning, all the distinguished participants for the 6th INA and NAK workshop. It is my great privilege and honor to take this opportunity to participate in this very important event. And I'm very pleased to share with you our research progress on space debris removal mission. So this talk will be a little bit of a technical nature. So I hope I would like to ask you a kind understanding. There are some mathematical equations which I did not intend to give you too much, but since this talk is focused more details of technology, but I'll do my best to give you more comprehensive understanding of the material and the technology progress in the GNC for space debris removal. Okay, this chart shows you left-hand side is showing the number of satellites for last 6 years. As you can see, the number is increasing quite rapidly. And in recent years, you might be familiar with mega constellations such as Starlink and OneWeb, where they're planning to as many as 40,000 satellites, and the Starlink case, and there will be more. Even Chinese government recently announced 10,000 low Earth orbit satellite mega constellation. So we have no idea how many satellites will be and how crowded the space in the future, in the near future, next 10 or 10 years. It's a little bit scary in the sense that on the right-hand side, we have and challenging, and we have really difficult issue in for space debris on the right-hand side. That is the animation, the future, the space. So we have to. It is not just responsibility, and it is not case for just sparing nation, but it's all the issue for all humankind on space development. So there are some useful numbers. Now we have there's some according to statistics report, we have more than 30,000 pieces of debris larger than softball orbiting on the Earth. And these all debris, they are flying at the speed of orbit, which is as fast as 20,000, almost 30,000 kilometers per hour. It's a huge kinetic energy. And they are reported to be 500,000 pieces of debris in the size of marble or larger. They were 1 centimeter. Even 100 million is a huge number of pieces of debris greater than 1 millimeter size, which we cannot even track by using a ground station facility. Even tiny paint flake can severely damage a spacecraft. So all these issues are really challenging, and as the number of satellites we launch is dramatically increasing, and this the issue, space debris issue is upcoming, and all our government, international organizations, they are working hard how to deal with this issue more efficient way. So this year, this chart shows you, how quickly the space object increased over the years since the Sputnik launch until 2020. As you can see, this the violet shows you the debris, right? There is huge jump in 2006 and 2010. That is reported to be due to unintentional collision between Russian iridium and Russian cosmos and iridium. That was not intentional at all, but it took place in 2009, and this is the Penguin China tested ASAT anti-satellite system on orbit that created a huge number of space debris in orbit. And this all the debris, the density is really heavily populated within below 1,000 kilometer and 600 kilometers. So it is very populated, and most of the Leo constellation satellite, they are positioned between 600 and 1,000 kilometers. So we need to pay attention to that. So we have a Kessler syndrome for space debris. That was Kessler was a scientist in NASA in 1978. He made the theory that space debris that they tend to generally increase the likelihood of further collisions. We have the possibility of the collision of debris that increase, that are more likely of further collision. So population density of space debris will be ever increasing. So that is a Kessler syndrome. So 1 kilogram of object even impacting at 10 kilometer per second speed then can severely damage 1 ton of mass of satellite. And there is then how long the space debris can survive, can stay on orbit, and how long it will take until them come back to the Earth and break down. And as you assume, depending upon altitude and perigee altitude, and depending upon the year, some debris it takes more than 200 years, and so that even longer for geostationary orbit, it takes more than few thousands of years and few decades. So it is too long, and the number and population density is increasing sharply. So how to manage all this debris issue is a big issue. All of us working on space development. So there is some recent work efforts for space. How can we actively remove? How can we clean up the space? So we have a new space debris removal startup all over over the world. So there are believed to be more than 100 startups over the world working on space. It's very promising. And on the right-hand side, it shows you the cartoon, how we can chase a spacecraft and capture space debris and bring it back to Earth's atmosphere for re-entry, and so that we can actively remove those debris instead of waiting for natural decay. It takes a few decades, even more than 1,000 years. And we have recent progress in space robotics and guidance and navigation technology, which I personally believe is possible to send this mission satellite to capture space debris and remove by active manner. And there has been some recent example of real mission, such as Clear Space by ESA and remove debris by University of Surrey in collaboration with ESA and the Star Rocket. And there is also one startup company from Japan, Astroscale. They are all working on active space debris removal mission by using space robot technology and GNC technology. One very promising approach by removal debris mission, they tested as many as 4 different innovative technology on orbit to remove debris, such as net and vision navigation, and they used the harpoon to capture the debris and the drag sail also. So these things are really happening, and in the future we're expecting more advance in technology and with more success story for active space debris mission. And how can we execute this active space debris mission? Now let's a little bit focus on how this chaser satellite approach the target that is space debris, you can say that. So there are also called the relative motion between target and chaser. Both target and chaser, they are orbiting very fast. So chaser is slowly reducing relative speed and approach the target and capture the target. So we have a chaser here with a robot arm and camera sensor, and to capture the target and bring it back to Earth's atmosphere. And both target and chaser, they are very fast, more than 8 kilometers per second orbital speed. But we can reduce practically, we can reduce the relative speed equal to 0. We can do that with current technology, and we have many examples of spacecraft rendezvous and docking. For example, International Space Station and the Mir, and also we have recent success in space robotic the Orbital Express, where they send one spacecraft, chaser spacecraft, and they exchange the battery and refuel the battery which for the satellite, which lifetime has been expired. So today I would like to a little bit now discuss with the navigation. Navigation is a technology that how you can figure out the relative position and velocity to approach the target. So we need this navigation information. We need guidance to follow this, to make this trajectory. We need a control that is controlling the body axis to the point robot arm and camera here, the vision camera, and all these three things they are put together for the space stability mission. So I'd like to introduce our this is work done by one of our lab members, the Hae-Yoon Han, who is she is a master student, and she is a co-author of this my presentation. So I would like to first share with you relative navigation technology using image sensors for space debris mission. So this is a recent video from YouTube. One is clear space, and you see that this mission satellite will approach the debris and capture the debris. And this activity debris removal, this is animation, not real video. And also we have on-orbit servicing, where your mission, the service satellite, approaching your target satellite, and it is doing service for replacing battery and fuel, refueling the satellite. Okay, so one of the key issues is that the target is space debris, and space debris is not cooperating with the chaser. Okay, so space, because debris does not have any active sensor, any device, any communication the tools. So the target is classified as uncooperative target. So for this uncooperative target is more difficult for this rendezvous mission, because if you have the cooperative target has typical the marker or beacon, that this beacon give you a relative the signature that you can estimate relative position and attitude between the target and the chaser for cooperative target. So it's much easier, and it is well-defined problem for cooperative target. But most of the debris, they are uncooperative target. They do not cooperate each other. So we need our own approach technology to estimate the relative navigation approach between service satellite, mission satellite, and the target, which is debris. So we want to use the vision technology, the camera, vision navigation technology, to get the relative navigation between target and service or mission satellite. Why the camera is good? Because the camera is relatively lightweight, and the power consumption is low. And nowadays you have a very fast vision process that is can be used for space mission also. So you want to use monocular single camera to capture to get relative navigation information with respect for uncooperative target, which is space debris. Okay? That's the idea. So how can we make it happen? Well, we have a service satellite here, we have a target, and we have a camera. So I want to take image of the target, and I want to get initial pose, okay, initial pose between the target, which is debris, and one satellite. And once I get the initial pose estimation, which is very critical information for final guidance and final approach phase. So this initial information is very critical because we have no idea for uncooperative target what is the relative navigation information between target and the service satellite. So we have this initial information, then we can successively, continuously the track the pose between mission satellite, service satellite, and the debris, so that we can have a guidance command by firing thruster, by firing other actuator device. We can gradually approach the target and finally capture the target. So this pose estimation and relative navigation is very critical element and very important first stage of the mission. So a little bit about mathematics, which I don't want to explain the details, and just the concept. We have the target, and we have a service chaser spacecraft. So we are interested in the relative motion, not the absolute motion, because we want to make the relative position and velocity between debris and our chaser to 0 for final docking and the capture maneuver. So in order to do that, we need to understand the gravity and the orbital mission. That is something very the important element, how they are flying, what is the relative motion, what kind of force, what is the inertial force, and what is the gravity interaction between inertial force and the gravitational force. They are all a relative motion between target and chaser service, and relative rotational dynamic between target and the chaser service. It can be described in mathematics like that, which are readily available in any the technical report and textbook. So how can you get the relative pose information? So we are using vision camera here. We take the target, the debris information. So this debris is three-dimensional thing, okay? Three-dimensional thing. So we take all the feature point of three-dimensional, the world, the coordinate of the target and the two-dimensional point, and then there is a mathematical relationship, relative pose between your chaser satellite or service satellite and target by taking three-dimensional information into two-dimensional image plane. So it's a mathematics. So physically, intuitively, you can understand that how this three-dimensional the debris, the feature can be mapped into two-dimensional camera in mathematics. That is rotational and translational between two objects. It is called the PNP problem in vision processing in robotics. It is a well-established approach, and you can get open source code here. So you can just take advantage of the vision technology in robotics. Okay, so if you look at the debris here, right? So how can you get the initial idea, information, the clue for relative attitude? You take only defect point, right? If you look at this plane area, you don't have any information. But if you look at this corner point, right, we call it the defect. So you can get a defect information, and by taking this information, defect information, we take a multiple point, and then all these points between the configuration, the unique characteristic of debris and model can be used for vision processing, and then two-dimensional plane image processing. They provide us this initial pose by taking image, and we have an intermediate pose estimation, we have a precise and pose selection and initial pose estimation. All these 5-step approach have been developed by our research group, and we verify that. So the final goal is to get the image processing, and we have initial pose between debris and the chaser satellite. So we compared this, our algorithm, we called it the convexity defect-based CDA algorithm. This is our own algorithm. And then we compared with other conventional algorithm, Landsat or CDA. We also made a simplified version of CDA, and we did simulation. If you look at this chart, this shows you that how accurately you can get the relative position and relative attitude information by using camera only for over 360 degree of azimuth angle for debris and your surface satellite. So this red portion is that you have a really poor visibility, observability, and the blue is you have very high quality and fine information, navigation information for relative position and relative altitude. So this CDA, our own algorithm, we call it the CDA, and it has a more very comparable performance, but we have a significantly low computational time, almost 20 times or 50 times as some computational efficiency compared to Landsat algorithm. And then we test this algorithm. We are assuming all different type of considering how far you are looking at the debris and whether your satellite debris is 4-panel or 2-panel, right? The symmetry and texture also. All these different type of debris, and we are checking the performance of our algorithm for relative pose and relative position information. So we are changing relative distance, case 1, and the shape symmetric. In this case, you're losing a lot of visibility for because you don't have any uniqueness in the feature. They are all symmetric. You're losing very distinct feature in this case. And we have a texture also. For texture level, you have a very light reflectivity is degraded, so you have less information. So all these things between this relative position and how far your target, right? So if you have a target, you are losing a lot of information because you can only look at approach the panel only, so you can see all the red. So it's a very poor performance. So if you see the target from the far distance, there is nothing you can see out of there, right? So there you are losing a lot of visibility because the target is too far from the surface satellite, or if it's too close, you're losing a lot of visible unique picture over there. So this is something that matches our intuition, and that perfectly is verified through our simulation and verification. And also this 4-panel performance is not as good as 2-panel. 2-panel is asymmetric, so you can see easily the debris can be identified, but 4-panel is symmetric, so we don't have any idea the left and right, right? So you can see this outlier ratio for if you go to a 4-panel and significantly degraded. So we are checking this algorithm. So this execution time for 4-panel is really longer than, it takes more time obviously, and that the pass rate and outer ratio that result in something we are expecting. And then the texture is a surface characteristic. It's very important, right? The stone surface does not reflect any light source. So in real space, this is very realistic problem for spacecraft is made of different materials. So texture type is important. The factor in determining all the performance. You can see that all if using these satellites are made of some different texture that the navigation performance really degrades for close proximity operation. Okay, so I'd like to the tracking. So finally, we made that initial early the post initialization, and then we went to the full 3D animation that your satellite is chaser is orbiting around the target and get the measurement, and you can see that how this the debris target and get the it takes image of the picture point and then get the pose estimation, and the performance has been something we verified the simulation already. So that is a simulation result for whole 3-dimensional scenario case. So everything was quite within our boundary, and hopefully we can apply this technology for future real mission. Now I would like to have in 5 more minutes that I need to move quickly. Now I'd like to talk about the dynamics and relative motion dynamics and guidance issue. The previous one, navigation. So how this target and chase they are orbiting, and as I said, right, it's a little bit tricky because they are moving together. So all the inertial Coriolis, centrifugal, and capillary and gravity motion, they are working together to make this type of relative motion in this so-called LV LH frame, not the inertial frame, but also we have orbital frame. All these equations have been developed since the 1960s already, when people talk about space station and mirror docking and all these equations. So we need to take advantage of that. And for relative motion between the target and the chaser, target's debris and chaser, there can be many, and we can classify 6 different type of maneuver profile, how they can approach it together, how can they station keeping, how can use impulsive thrust input, how can put the fish, how can produce continuous thrust to final approach and things like that. All these dynamics and guidance should be combined with the relative navigation, and this is thanks to this linear equation. We have this analytical solution that we can this approach the target. We can design all this guidance law that between chaser and the target. We have analytical guidance delta V maneuver that the blue is a chaser and the red is target. So the chaser can have the impulsive type of orbital maneuver, and you can initiate the orbital drift. And while it is orbiting, we have Kepler's motion by gravity only. So by 2 impulse, you can operate the target. And this idea is very simple and is well established, as I said, since the 1960s. So it's been there for almost 60 years for early day of manned spacecraft mission and this docking maneuver. So all this, the rendezvous, we call it the mid-range from 100 kilometer to 1 kilometer within, and we have a final approach phase, which is called the proximity rendezvous between 100 meter to the target. All this scenario has been simulated with these 6 different modes. So we have also n-pulse. It was 2 impulse maneuver, but we can have also n-pulse. You thrust only 5 n's. It's not continuous burn. It is impulse burn, and you can very easily design this n-pulse impulsive burn to make the chaser approach the final target and final phase of nearby and rendezvous. And then they approach. Once they approach, they fly around the target. You see that the chaser spacecraft is flying around, but it's a relative motion. They're flying at the speed of orbit, very fast, but their relative speed is so small that now you are final ready for the final approaching the guidance for closed feedback. That's what we are all this docking for space shuttle and Soyuz to International Space Station docking and fly around, and this one you can easily find from the YouTube. So this manned mission case, you can use unmanned space debris removal mission for that matured and well-established technology for future space debris mission. So this is final approach. Once you have, okay, this I'm almost done. And the last page. So we have the target. We have now fly around the chaser, service satellite, the debris, and then this is simple. We don't have any propulsion. We just initial condition drift. We are using just the gravity, using like that, right? So finally, we have final approach of closed guidance. You can close the target. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. I'm sorry that sorry about the equations that you might not be familiar, maybe uncomfortable, but I try to be kicking off to kick jump it and try to give you the overview of the navigation, vision navigation, and pulse-based, impulse-based guidance technology, which is very well-known technology already, but we can put things together for future active space debris mission. Once again, thank you very much for your attention. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bang, for this wonderful lecture. We got to know about the space debris and also methodologies of how to hopefully get rid of it and live in a more uncluttered space with time. We now move on to the next talk, and I have great pleasure in inviting Dr. Alok Kumar to deliver his talk. Dr. Kumar is a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. again, one of the premier institutes of our country. He's an expert in the area of microfluidics, amongst many other things. He's been working on quite a few interesting things. And today he's going to give us his perspective on the lab-on-chip paradigm and what it can do for space technology. So, without further ado, I'll request Professor Alok Kumar to deliver his talk. He's just taking a minute to get the slides are up. Thank you.
So thank you, Professor Mittal, for introducing me and for inviting me for this very special occasion. Now, we are all excited about space, I think. So there's so many things for India to do now, especially that Chandrayaan has landed successfully. There's so much more anticipation of what things we need to do, what preparations should we do, what should we plan. Now, in this entire gamut of things, I'd like to speak about a very special technology that probably will become more and more relevant to the space technology, the space industry in the coming years. So I'd like to start with this slide here. Now, I guess all of you can recognize this is the International Space Station. These are pictures from that. The International Space Station is still flying and it's edging closer towards the end of its life. As it edges closer, we are also entering a new phase of space age, which many people have referred to as the Space Age 2. Space Age 2 differs from the Space Age 1 in the sense that there's going to be a lot of private participation in space technology, and that's going to be becoming more and more important in the days to come. Along with private participation, one of the things that we anticipate will happen in Space Age 2 is maybe the advent of human colonies on some of these distant places, the Moon and the Mars. The Mars, obviously, there's a lot of anticipation of that. Moon, I guess you've already heard of the Artemis program. This is already planned, at least by the USA. But as we look at this transition, and we look into the future of human colonization, we should look back at this amazing experiment. I mean, in space there's been so many things, but probably what catches everybody's attention is the landing on the Moon and Neil Armstrong and maybe Chandrayaan missions. But probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest experiments that we have done is the International Space Station. What we've achieved here is just fantastic. The International Space Station has been up there for more than 2 decades now. And it's not even the first space station. And humans have lived there for long durations and have done fantastic things. I'm obviously not going to speak about everything, but what comes to my interest is our biological experiments in space. You probably recognize this first photograph. This is Scott Kelly, and he himself has been an experiment. If you have read about the NASA twin experiment, he's one of the twin brothers who's been to space. His other brother was on Earth, while data was taken from both of them for a very, very long time to see what exposure to space does. So the human going into space obviously presents itself as a significant complexity in missions. The other thing that we have to do with humans are experiments in space. You might have astronauts who need diagnostics in space. You might have astronauts who need to perform different experiments. You might have to see if the exposure is significant enough, or you might have to do a drug delivery over there. So those things are also going to become important. This, by the way, is again an image from the International Space Station, and it shows here where you can do different experiments. Now, on the International Space Station, we actually have microscopes. We even have a location to do biological experiments, and this is going to become very, very important. By the way, I'm audible there, right? Because here it is it's muted, so that's not a problem. It's all, oh, yeah, thanks. Just confirming. Okay. So, biological experiments and biomanufacturing in space are going to become very, very important. They're going to probably become some of the emerging technologies. And in this respect, now, as far as India is concerned, see, we have the first human went to space really long time ago. The space station itself has been up there for 20 years. So, in some sense, we have been lagging really behind. So, should we be excited? Should we be worried that we have lagged behind a lot? The interesting thing is we have lagged behind, that's true, but there are interesting technologies that are coming up which will probably change the game. And this is probably a very good time for emerging nations like India to come in and work in. So one of this is the lab on a chip paradigm. Now, the overall idea of lab on a chip is actually very simple. I've just taken some definition, and it basically says that it's a lab on a chip is a system which integrates one or several laboratory functions in a small miniaturized component. Now, if you don't pay too much attention to this definition, there are three important aspects of lab on a chip, and they are summarized here. One is automation, the second is miniaturization, and the third is modularity. So you want to have automated operation of the entire laboratory. So a lab on a chip already tells you that you're doing some laboratory function from start to end, and you want to do it in an automated fashion, but you also want to I can continue? Okay.
You're good.
I'm good. Okay. So, automation, miniaturization, and modularity. Now, automation by itself is a very complicated task, but what you want to do is achieve it end to end. Miniaturization, because this particular photograph that I'm showing you here, this is actually by one of my friends taken at when I was a graduate student. Shows a complicated lab on a chip that he had built. And you can see this is a microscope lens right here. So you can see how it's small. So the typical lab on a chip device is like a credit card or something bigger, small, and maybe even smaller at times. The other important aspect of lab on a chip is modularity, which means that you can combine a lot of different functions on top of each other, so you can keep on building more and more complexity over time. And it also allows you to do multiple experiments over time in that. So, so this is the idea of a lab on a chip. So I wanted to show a couple of different examples of lab on a chip devices and what they can do. It's been a very important area of research for diagnostics on Earth itself, not just in space, on Earth itself. And that's very important because it's still an important area, but it's just about emerging. Okay, so we are just getting our slides back. So the device that I'm showing you here, this actually was, so the moment you miniaturize it, okay, the challenge, what is the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge is you no longer have access to the regular tools that you have built in order to access something. So if you were in a lab, you would use a tweezer. If you were in a lab, you would use your hands to do some experiment, maybe pour a fluid from one place to another, maybe take cells out using a sieve or using a membrane filter something. But you do not have any access to any of that once you start miniaturizing it. Everything has to be automated. And it just makes things very difficult. So you actually have to have new technologies who have to come up, and that's what has been happening over the last 20-25 years. People have been just developing new technologies in order to accommodate this issue. For example, here what I'm showing you is this is a schematic of let's say a lab on a chip device. It's a microfluidic channel if you want. A microfluidic channel is basically a very small channel. At least one dimension is of the order of microns. And you have, let's say, antibodies
and its corresponding chemicals all in here. And now you want to gather, let's say this is a particle which has one chemical species which will bind to another chemical species, and you want to do fluorescence reading on them. Now, if you want to do that, the volume is so small that the signal intensity is very, very low. So in order to pump up the signal intensity, you have to gather all these particles in some way. So here, this is, for example, we impose a small electric field and then a laser beam which actually starts aggregating all the particles together so that all that intensity, fluorescent intensity is available for readout at one particular place. This is actually something that we had developed when I was a graduate student. Later on, this idea of using lasers and electric fields in order to concentrate and target species at that scale. And now it has started pouring over into the area of diagnostics. So for example, this is Professor from Hanseng Chong's lab at National Cheng Kung University in Taiwan, who took this technology and actually started applying it for immunofluorescence and immunoassay studies. So he would use this technology to aggregate these bodies together and use the fluorescent readout. So here, for example, you see the fluorescence readout on one of the axes, and this is different kind of samples. And with this, you can actually do diagnostics. So he has done multiple types of diagnostics using this kind of technology. So some of these problems have started getting solved of being able to handle fluids and particles at that scale. The other aspect of lab on a chip is, lab on a chip is a paradigm, it's an idea, it can do many different things. So while it can do diagnostics, it can also serve as an experimental platform. And that's exactly what people have been doing now. For example, if you want to study how heart cells behave under different conditions, if you want to see whether certain drugs have the desired effect, now doing human trials or doing mouse trials, etc., they become more and more complicated and very expensive and time consuming. But what if you could make a small device in which you could put your heart cells and then replicate them and give them the condition that they do experience at the microscale? Because cells, they are microscale in nature. So the environment that they are subjected to is usually often microscale. So the fluid arteries, etc., that are reaching them, the fluid capillaries that are reaching them, they are small. So if you could do that using microfluidics, you could make different chambers, integrate them, make many different experiments in parallel, because now it is miniaturized. You could do hundreds of experiments in a very, very small channel. And then if you could create these different organs, replicates of these different organs. You are not obviously trying to replicate the entire organ, but you could target certain important areas of the organs and you could replicate them on a chip. Then what you could do is you could target with certain drugs and see whether the cells are responding in the way you are. So this idea has now given rise to organ on a chip paradigm, and it's becoming a very, very important platform in medicine to test the effect of different conditions. So this image is taken from this particular paper. It's a recent Nature Reviews Materials paper, I think 2018. So again, lab on a chip is a paradigm. It has many different effects. The whole idea, again, is to miniaturize experiments done in the lab in a small scale, automate it, make it modular. Automation is very difficult. Okay, it's even in the lab when we do experiments, it's not easy. We usually have people doing experiments by themselves. Miniaturization, there's a whole set of technologies that are developing, and they're sort of now reaching a mature level now. So you can use some of the technologies there. And modularity. Modularity, I think, is one of the important automatic, it just comes with the idea. You can now start doing more and more complicated things on top of each other in such a system. So lab on a chip has been an important area of research by itself in the area of diagnostics, in the area of medicine for Earth. But it has some of the important features that makes it very good or very noteworthy for space applications, which are again the 3 points that I said: automated, modular, and miniaturized. So people should be trying for this, right? And yes, they have been. I mean, they have experiments have started where, for example, this is from a very extended table that we recently made of some of the experiments people have been trying in the last 15, 20 years. And you can see on the top, there is an experiment that is 2026. So this is planned. There's another experiment, BioSentinel 2023, that is actually feeding into this. The BioSentinel program is actually a bit older, and it has recently been revived with the Artemis program for other things. There are other experiments that have been flying for some time now, but it's not a whole lot. Okay, people have just started experimenting with it. And again, the lab on a chip paradigm is going to revolutionize biological experimentation. And the whole idea is it's small. Yes, so you make a small, so this is, for example, satellite, CAN satellite, which is just a small box in which there are so many different channels. I want to take two very specific examples and showcase what people have been doing in space. This is the first experiment that I could find. If anybody can point out any prior experiment, I'd be happy to take that into account. But this is GeneSat-1. It was developed by the United States, NASA, and probably the first biological nanosite that was launched sometime in 2006. The experiment was actually quite simple. They had a bacteria and they had a fluorescence readout. So they had fluorescence optics built into this, and you have all the pumps, valves, all at one place, and the entire reading is being done at another place. And what you get is a fluorescence reading versus time, and that gives you an important biological indicator. This is a rather simple sensor. You can, obviously the idea is to later on you can start incorporating more and more complex systems on board and more complex sensors. But this being one of the first experiments was itself a very big achievement. One of the current ones that they're doing is the BioSentinel program, where they're going east in a small card-like device to study the effect of outer space on microorganisms. And this is integrated. This is one entire chip, and this is one entire experiment. And now you can see how small these are, and you can now start stacking them up together into much, much bigger experiments. So this was the BioSentinel program, and now it has, I think, going to play an important part in the Artemis experiments as well. Now, how easy is it to make these payloads? Not easy at all. Not easy at all. And they're very, very difficult. And I will share with you quickly my personal journey in making one of the payloads. The reason is it's non-standard. Handling electronics has been now standardized in the space industry, but handling fluidics reusably and for long times, along with biological samples, is not easy. So we got interested in this because we were interested in a particular bacteria. So this is a bacteria, a very interesting bacteria, by the way. It's called Sporosarcina pasteurii. When you provide it urea and some of the other conditions, what it starts doing is it starts breaking up urea into carbonic acid and ammonium, and a soluble ammonium salt. So then if you have calcium in the environment, then the calcium comes together with the carbonate and starts forming calcium carbonate. This is a bacteria that actually lives in the soil, and so this is the particular pathway it takes. So it takes urea, it breaks it up, and it makes it NH4 plus, and the calcium which you provide binds with the CO3 and makes it calcium carbonate. So this becomes the insoluble calcium carbonate. Now, there are many other pathways that are possible, but this particular is an aerobic bacteria, aerobic pathway, very, very interesting. And we were very much interested in this specifically because when we use lunar soil simulant with a bacteria, with cementation solution, I'm not going into the details of the cementation solution here because it's a short talk, that's an entire talk by itself. You can actually combine this and make it into a brick-like structure, which we call space bricks. So this brick was hard enough, almost 4 megapascals yield strength, compressive strength, and you could even machine it on a lathe. So you can see this is a nice little cylinder because we actually machined it. So this bacteria was of interest to us, and we wanted to understand what happens in space. and how to do this in space. But obviously, we had to get started with something very, very simple. So we said, okay, why don't we just try to see whether grow these bacteria in a microgravity condition and see what happens. So we started designing our lab on a chip device. We actually started with microfluidics because that's what I did during when I was a graduate student. And it was very difficult. It was very difficult to do those experiments, difficult to find parts, difficult to make the valves, difficult in many ways to fully automate. We switched to a slightly higher configuration. We went to minifluidic scale. So instead of the micro scale, we went to the minifluidic scale. That came with its own advantages. And we designed this small chamber where we grow the bacteria. And you have an LED. So this is a particular sensor combination. So you have an LED and you have a photodiode here. And you can measure the optical density in this region by shining this LED. So we made this small device, and you can see how small this is. There's a 5 rupee coin here. There are 3 wells in here. This is the LED, and there's a photodiode that you cannot see. There is a well for the bacteria to grow, and this we called Manas, which is Sanskrit for imagination. And this was our first device. But as you can see, this entire device was not automated. And this was being done at the lab, and we faced a lot of different problems, including design issues, including leaks, including the problem that as the bacteria grows over time, we got nice OD curves, but as the bacteria grows over time, there is in natural lab experiments, there's always oxygen that is there. But here, the devices have to be totally full. I mean, you have to fill it so that there's no air bubbles. So it actually loses out on oxygen at some point, and you start to see oxygen deficiency issues that start to come up. So these are not easy problems to solve, but we still were able to conceive this modular first design, the cassette itself. And this got published in Acta Astronautica in 2021. But still, it was nowhere close to an automated system. We are still doing everything by hand, but at least we had a system that we could put into place. So then we went to Manas 2.0, which was a slightly more higher version of this. So we have, again, 3 chambers here. We had to figure out which fittings to use. And by the way, it was a nightmare. I mean, it's such a simple thing. You'd think that you take a pipe and you use fittings of the same diameter, flush fit, and it'll work. And even finding the proper fittings that would go for space, they're not that easy. So this was quite a bit of a challenge, but we ended up automating it to some extent. So we have our pump, which would pump in the nutrients over time, because we realized that if you don't keep pumping nutrients again and again, the cells, they see oxygen deprivation at some point. So we made this using a 3D printed support. This is obviously not space qualified, but we were able to make this, and we realized all the challenges of making this kind of a device for space, which includes the problem of automation and the problem of minifluidics and the part design and the non-standard issues that are there that comes with handling fluids at this scale. Now, the good part is, since we did not go for microfluidics, since we went for minifluidics, we can now put more than a bacteria here. We can even put worms into this chamber, small worms. We can put larger human cells. And there have been different people who have approached with interest in growing different types of cells. So we are very happy to look into that and see what are the possibilities. And once we are able to do this, there's a long pathway between Manas 2.0 and Manas 3.0. But now you see this is a more complete system. We have gone for a tray type of design. I'm not going to disclose everything of the design because we have not published this yet, but hopefully we'll go in one of the Gaganyaan missions with this. But what we have now is a complete system which is fully automated. Experiments happen here. There are 4 chambers. The bacteria grows here. There are sensors which are incorporated. And then the data gets stored in the system itself. But obviously, if you have telemetry, you can also download the data. It's just numbers, so it's not a whole lot of problem. But if you start incorporating other sensors like cameras, etc., then the data could also start becoming heavy. So in the long journey that we took in this area, we realized that this is a fantastic paradigm. It's going to be very, very important in space. It can be used in a number of different applications such as diagnostics, medicine, etc., for which the Manas hopefully will become a building block, because this has been like almost 2018 is when we started with this, and we are hopefully close to the finish line, at least with the first prototype. And but it gave us a very, very important overview of some of the big challenges that comes. Now, the challenges are that automating for space is not easy, especially for fluids, because things are not standardized. You don't necessarily have a standard set of valves that you'll use. You don't necessarily have a standard set of pipes that you will use. You don't have a standardized set of interconnects that you will use. And all this time, the moment you bring in biology, the temperature aspects comes into play. Now, with electronics, we know that obviously electronics obviously has an upper and a lower bound for functioning, but those bounds are much bigger when it compares to living organisms. Living organisms cannot tolerate too much of a temperature difference. So, for example, there are some bacteria that will grow very nicely at 37 degrees Celsius, but they won't grow very well at 30 degrees Celsius. But electronics will work very well from, let's say, minus 10 degrees Celsius to 40 degrees, 50 degrees Celsius. So the band of temperature that electronics can survive is far bigger than the band for biological organisms. So that also is a challenge. So there are multiple challenges here. But overall, we have learned quite an important lesson. And again, just to summarize all the challenges, the control of fluids, the continuous movement in these small confined places is not trivial. As you want to make it more and more complicated with more and more design issues, that becomes even more challenging. Complete automation is a challenge, and again, this increases very, very fast depending on what you want to do. Standardization is lacking, and for we need a lot more special microgravity simulator than we have done, at least for our sake. We need to make random positioning machines and do lab scale experiments, more and more experiments on Earth before we are very, very confident for space. But the good part is, these are the challenges, but the good part is this is a very new area for space technology. And at least for India, which has been lagging behind in the biological aspects for so long, this is like the cell phone moment. And when we had regular phones, our infrastructure, technology infrastructure, was so much behind than many of the countries. But then came the cell phone moment, and as the world shifted to cell phones, we built our infrastructure at more or less the same time. And today, our cell phone infrastructure is excellent, right? I mean, it can be compared to everybody else. So this is an area for which is open for innovation. Maybe India and Korea can work together and develop some of these. I know that in Korea there are many colleagues who are fantastic experts in the area of lab on a chip. So this is maybe an area where we can come together. And there are many more things that, obviously, this is going to be a restricted 30-minute talk, so I don't want to talk about it. But it has its own applications for making space paradigm also. So with that, I think I'm just going to end my talk. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Kumar, for this very interesting talk on microfluidics and the lab on chip. There was an equally good talk given by Professor Bang. And we can now take some questions. We have a few minutes. So those of you who are interested in asking a question, you could jot down your questions on the chat box, and I'll be happy to convey them to the speakers. And while you do that, since there are no questions right now on the chat box, I have a few, and I'll take the liberty of putting them forth. So my first question is for Professor Bang.
Yes.
So there was a very nice algorithm that we saw from you, actually a set of algorithms where we could guide certain devices and bring the space debris into control. I was just wondering, is there any plans of actually realizing these simulations into experiments and see how they perform, or you think that probably is not needed because of the maturity of these algorithms? We straight away implement them and get them from space. Would you have any ideas on that, Professor Bank?
Thank you for your.
I think you're muted right now.
Okay. Now, can you can you listen to me? Thank you very much. Is it still muted?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Sanjay, for your the question. And actually, as I said, that is, I think the technology maturity level is high enough to implement any experimental mission already. And it's a matter of a budget and a matter of this how much technology they're expecting anyone. Actually,
Bang, I'm afraid I don't know about your colleagues in Korea, but here we are unable to hear you. Probably some technical glitch.
I see.
May I request our colleagues in Korea to see if we can get this unmuted? There's a problem with the audio; it's not reaching us here.
Actually, we can hear Professor Pang's voice clearly here. So
Professor Ann, are you able to listen to Professor Bang?
yeah, we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you both Indian delegate and.
So the problem is at our end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's okay. I can.
Maybe then what I can do is I can unmute my computer.
I can hear you. I can hear Professor Bang.
Oh, thank you.
Professor Bang, can you say something because I muted?
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me right now? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me right now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, they can hear you. So please go ahead, Professor Pang.
Okay. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, they can hear you. Please go ahead.
The questions actually.
Thank you, Professor. They can hear you.
Yeah, I have some technical problem to howling. But I would like to, in summary, in response to your question, it can be done in a very efficient way. Actually, NASA and some space agency, they tested that proximity operation already using small satellite, even cube satellite and micro satellite. So I think the technology maturity level is good enough to send real satellite and to do some experimental mission already. So I think this technology available and it's a matter of a budget and a matter of this, as I said, we have more than 100 startups over the world and we have a very serious contenders for that mission already. So I'm very positive and very optimistic for the future of that active space delivery mission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. So Professor Sanjay Mitter, you have other question to other speaker?
It on my computer, although there's some problem with the audio centrally. Apologies about that. Yeah, thank you very much for your answer. I have also a question for Professor Alok. Professor Kumar, would you be able to, you did mention about this that, this microfluidics is of course a big challenge, but coupled with microgravity, what are the additional challenges? So how does microgravity make these things more challenging? Could you tell us a little bit more?
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges, if there is a leak, it will be all over. right? So when on Earth we know that gravity is going to make sure the fluid flows in a certain way, so you can check for leaks, but that's from an operational point, that's one of the problems. But if you are looking at it from purely a fluid mechanics perspective, it's actually better because these are all low Reynolds number flows, so gravity was not going to have much of an effect. You would not get sedimentation effects from cells, so that is actually a very, very good thing in that sense. So while on the science side, it can play a good role, on the application side or the engineering side, it actually is detrimental. For example, even if you have something like a 3D printer where there's a small nozzle of the order of millimeters, so the fluid is coming out, but the gravity is no longer there to make sure it goes in a certain direction. It's just going to come out. Because of inertia, it's going to follow to some distance, but after that it's just going to be, it might just go all over the place. So there are operational issues, but from pure biological or biophysical side, there are advantages also for this.
Another follow-up question, if you can probably address that. You talked about pre-programmed experiments. Is it also possible to design dynamic experiments in the sense that we get some data?
Professor Sanjay Mitra, your voice is
we want
faint.
to alter something to measure the parameters, vary them a little bit. Is there something to that, or that's too far-fetched?
It is very challenging at the moment. It's very challenging even on the lab scale to do something which is dynamic. It will be far more challenging in space. So I'm sure it has to be done at some point. For example, if you are looking into medicine or make in space type of thing, you would want to be able to control space, the parameters, and change them as per the requirement, or as if something changes. But right now, it's still a work in progress.
Thank you very much. I don't see any more questions in the chat box, so I'll hand over the floor to Professor Ahn, and he can take it on from here. Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is the end of today's workshop, and tomorrow we'll have the continuation, and the theme of space exploration and policies will be given by 4 speakers. And yeah, so it's not end, right? Tomorrow we have more program, and at the end we have some more discussions. So thank you for joining us, all the speakers and Professor Sanjay Mitra, and see you tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bye. Okay, that's it. Thank you. All right.